What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Pens and Tea. My name is Carrie, and today we're going to talk about the books that I read in July and the pen and ink combination that I used the most this month. So this month I tried something different. I read 3 books, and by read books, I actually read 1, but I listened to 2. I'm not a huge audiobook person, but this month, in the month of July, with what I was doing at work, it was very computer-centric, where I put in headphones and just kind of listen and zone out. So I listened to 2 audiobooks. I listened to Save Yourself by Cameron Esposito, which is a biography that she wrote herself, or autobiography since she wrote it herself, about her growing up, essentially a queer kid who had to navigate not only that in a very, very religious environment, but also the comedy environment in the 80s as a queer woman. Super fascinating, super funny. I loved it a lot. I actually appreciate the fact that I read it or listened to it as an audiobook, because I think listening to her voice tell her own story made it a lot better. Especially I went on a lot of long drives, and I played it in a car. So I really recommend that if you're interested, if you know who Cameron Esposito is at all. She's super funny, great storyteller, and she has a fascinating story. Whoa. So I listened to that one. I also listened to Atomic Habits, and I'm forgetting his name right now. Oh my gosh. I'm going to put his name down at the bottom here because I can't remember. This one I actually started forever ago, like January, maybe even last summer. I started it a billion years ago. But as I have already said, I'm not a huge audiobook person. I very much prefer the tactile feel of an actual book. I like sitting down, opening the pages, smelling it, having a cup of tea, like that whole process behind reading a book. So it took me a very long time. So I did finally get back into it, and finished it up. The book, I like it and I don't like it. So in the beginning, it's fascinating. He's a really good storyteller, and he starts off the book talking about his own life. And yes, Parker, we'll play in a moment. And how he's sort of come to this habit finding, how maintaining and establishing habits has become sort of his bread and butter. So the beginning of the book was fascinating, listening to his life. Then it became very repetitive, a little bit dry, a little bit common sense related. And I didn't walk away from it thinking like, wow, that was so foundational. Like, I need to know, like, sure, there's some helpful tips. Absolutely. But to be honest, even though everyone in the world seems to recommend that book, I didn't actually like it that much. I thought that the audiobook was kind of dry. Maybe reading it would have been better than listening to it. But I didn't love it. To be honest, look up a summary of the book, and that's basically the takeaway. So I wouldn't really recommend that one. But a book that I would recommend is What Makes Sammy Run, by Bud Schulberg. This book I really, really enjoyed. This is first published 50 years ago to tumultuous praise and protest. What Makes Sammy Run shaped 2 generations' view of the movie business and introduced Sammy Glick, an archetype Hollywood player. Sammy's got a machete mouth and a genius for the double cross. As Bud Schulberg, author of the screenplay On the Waterfront, follows Sammy's relentless upward progress, he creates a virtuoso study in character that manages to be hilariously appealing, yet deeply compassionate. So this book is very old. Well, not this one in particular, but it was written quite some time ago. This copy happened to come out in 1990, but it was originally in the 40s, I believe. Yeah, 1941. So it's old, and you can tell in the writing. There's some inappropriate words and whatnot, but for the most part, it's still pretty okay. Basically, there's 2 characters that you follow. Sammy is the main one. How he starts off as this, yes, Parker, I know. Good grief. He sort of starts off as this little like intern type thing in the movie business. And Sammy is working under Mr. Mannheim, Mr. Mannheim. And basically it follows the rise of Sammy, where on the surface, he is everything you could absolutely ever want in an employee. He's hardworking, he's dedicated, he's motivated. He gets things done at an incredible speed, with efficiency and what you assume is good work. But Mr. Mannheim sees through it. While he absolutely hates Sammy with a burning, fiery passion because he knows he's a little shirt ball who's playing the game in a conniving, evil way, stepping over people, hurting people to promote himself. He also can't help but admire the gumshoe and tenacity that he has because he himself lacks that, and his career suffers for it. But he is a better human, at least from his point of view. So it really toes the line of how somebody in today, this is written in the 40s, but if you apply it to today, how somebody can breeze through their career so quickly, and you sort of admire their speed at which they can do it, the grit that they have, and dedication that they have to it, and sort of elevate themselves. I mean, by the end of this book, this kid in the 40s is making more money than I make now. It's bananas. But that it's never enough. Sammy is never satisfied. No matter how much he has, the grass is always greener. Whereas Mr. Mannheim, Al, doesn't have any of that. He envies that, but yet he has the things that really matter. So it sort of goes between the two. And yet, despite how awful Sammy is, you can't help but love him anyways, because it goes into his backstory, his childhood, and you understand why he is the way that he is. It's absolutely fascinating. Out of every book I think I've read this year, this one's one of the ones I prefer for a fictional story. I really, really like it. And it plays very well into modern day careers, even though it was written in 1941. But yeah, I highly 10 out of 10 recommend. So what pen and ink did I use a lot this month? All right, July was a hot month. So for the month of July, I primarily used my custom 912 with the Falcon nib. I did have the Ebonite feed as well, not this plastic one that's on it now. I have since swapped out the Ebonite feed from this pen into another 912, which is a bit of a spoiler for what's going to be coming up as my most used in September. Yeah, so I used the 912 Falcon nib and I loved this. It's honestly probably one of my favorite combinations to have now. And I've been forcing myself to use other things. And my favorite ink to put into this pen is Pilot Iroshizuku Tsukiyo. It is absolutely a stunner of an ink. Absolute stunner of an ink. It's nice and wet, which I very much like. So in this Falcon nib with an Ebonite feed, you can imagine what kind of ink saturation you would get, which is basically exactly what comes off of a Q-tip. It does mean that there's quite a long dry time when writing with this pen and ink combination. But I am very okay with it because I write on Tomoe River paper, and when I journal, I don't mind breaking at the end of the page before I have to turn it. I have done many reviews on this pen. I have actually done a first impression of this pen with the Ebonite feed and this ink. If you want to see a full writing sample, next month I will actually be able to start filming these videos with the proper writing sample because I will be done playing catch up at that point. And be back into the actual live months. So this is obviously the first month. So this is April, May, June, July. This is the first month I deviated from a color pattern here, which I did not even intend to follow. It just kind of happened that way. So check out April, May, and June if you want to see what inks those are and what pens I was using. But this ink is phenomenal. This whole range is phenomenal. They're a little bit expensive. You mostly pay for the bottle, but the ink quality is stunning. It's very smooth, very great flow. It's pretty wet ink. It's pretty easy to clean out in any pen. It's just really well behaved. So highly recommend if you can. This is going to take 8 years to dry, but once it does, it basically stays this color. It's ever so slightly darker in real life than it is on the camera, but there's a beautiful red sheen that does show, and this pen does show that because it is super wet. So I like it quite a bit.